Chip, before we begin, I just wanted to share with you kind of like a little lesson that I took away from you. When you first joined Airbnb, I sent you an email out of the blue, complete stranger. I can't even remember what it was about, and you responded. And I thought to myself, it's pretty cool that this guy's doing all this stuff, but he has the time to respond. And the same has been true each time that I have emailed you. And my lesson, my takeaway there is that we're never really too busy to give a simple email response. So I now do that every chance that I get, thanks to your little gesture.
Well, thank you. Generosity and respect are sort of woven into the hospitality business. And since I started a hospitality company, a boutique hotel company at age 26, I think it's woven into who I am. But more importantly, I think that this idea that we live in an email culture where people just don't respond to emails, even people who work with them, even to important emails, it's a sign of a disrespect. And it's not most of the time, it's not intended to be disrespect. But if you're the sender and the other person doesn't seem to be responding, even when you send them a second email, you just wonder whether how important you are to them.
Yeah. And it's funny, the one other person who kind of fits that profile for me is Seth Godin. Way back in the day, I sent an email to him. I was like, what do you think about this? And he responded immediately.
Seth and I went to business school together. We wrote our first book together. He was on my Wisdom Well blog earlier this year. He's a good friend of mine.
Hey, Unlock listeners. This episode's brought to you by Point Central, the leader in business-grade smart property solutions designed for rental properties. Point Central's technology helps you increase property safety, reduce operational costs, and improve guest satisfaction. Head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB to learn more. And Rental Guardian. With over 1 million property owners, thousands of property managers, hundreds of software partners and counting, Rental Guardian is arguably the most complete and trusted travel and damage protection platform in the industry. You can learn more at rentalguardian.com. And Breezeway. Breezeway's operations platform makes it easy to ensure quality, safety, and cleanliness across your properties so you can deliver an amazing guest experience every time. Head over to breezeway.io to learn more.
Ring, ring.
Yellow?
Hi, is this Matt Landau?
No, this is his assistant.
Well, I'm starting a vacation rental business. Do you think I could get in touch with Matt to learn more about how to make my business successful?
Yes, just head over to vrmb.com and sign up for his free newsletter. It's great.
Wow, thank you.
That was really strange little vignette that we just did. What's up, guys?
How's it going, Matt?
Where did you get that idea to just do that little act?
You cold call a lot of people, so I was looking for a cute way to get you to tell us a little bit about that philosophy. Didn't you once, Facebook message every flight attendant in Southwest Airlines looking for information about their free drink strategy?
I did. That is something that not everyone knows about me. In fact, I think the only people that know about this were in one particular conference where I shared it off the cuff. But in short, I love Southwest Airlines, and I've always observed that their flight attendants freewheeled the free drink voucher. Like, way too often will I see them give somebody a free drink or turn down the money for the alcohol. And I was always wondering, what is the rules in the Southwest employee handbook? What are the rules behind this? How do these people make these decisions? And of course, the only way to do that is by creepily messaging every Southwest flight attendant that you can find on Facebook until one of them replies. And she told me the most beautiful rule that the flight attendants are given. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah.
So finally, I got one message back, and here's what it said. Hi, Matt. So sorry it's taken me so long to respond. Yes, I'm a Southwest stewardess for 25 years, and to answer your question, yes, they allow us to give away free drinks at our own discretion when we witness random acts of kindness. Sometimes when the individual is just nice, sometimes when they've had a rough day. But I'll tell you one thing, when they ask for a free drink, they will not be getting one. We play by the golden rule, and sometimes passengers get a free drink if they play too. Isn't that a beautiful little sentiment to send to a complete creepster on Facebook?
I love it.
It is a lovely sentiment.
That tells a lot about her.
And Southwest. So now all of our listeners, you have the secret code to getting a free drink from Southwest flight attendants. Do not abuse it. Tammy, my guess is that when you heard that I was interviewing Chip, you were like desperate to be there in person.
Honestly, after I listened to the podcast, I thought I wish we weren't doing this remotely because I have so many questions and I want to meet him and have a drink with him or something, because he makes what other people would call middle life crisis. He makes it sound like something cool, exciting, something to look forward to. So I don't know. I don't know. I fall in love.
And he's also got the whole Burning Man background. Did you know that?
Yes, there is that.
He's
too.
on the board of directors, and I
Yeah.
must admit that was a nice point for us. He's got a very unique spin on a vacation rental business going on in Mexico. He's on the Burning Man board of directors. He's a really nice guy. There's a lot to like here. Plus, he spent time mentoring CEOs after having been a successful one himself. I mean, mentoring CEOs, it's like that movie with Robert De Niro. I just think it's a fascinating concept.
I loved in this interview how Chip got started. He basically convinced a bunch of investors to help him buy a motel. What was it? A pay-by-the-hour motel or something?
In the Tenderloin, yeah. It's a rough start, but he made it happen.
Yeah, in the Tenderloin of San Francisco. And he made it into like the coolest hotel in town, and that became the first hotel of Joie de Vivre, one of the biggest boutique hotel brands in the world. This interview, guys, is really special, not just because of Chip's intimate understanding of hospitality and how it works, but also I think his vision for the future, his ability to predict trends. He got in on the boutique hotel trend before anyone else knew about it. He got in on Airbnb before any of his friends had any idea. Even he knew what the company was about. And lastly, I think with this Modern Elder Academy, he's found this niche where he can be the first and probably of many more of these groups to come. I think I too want to have my midlife crisis somewhere nearby Chip. Any good heads up for people before we kick this interview off, my friends?
That it's impressive how someone this successful can be so relatable at the same time. So you're in for a treat.
All right. Well, before we get to this interview, Stuart, do you want to do another really strange role play, or should we just roll it? At 26 years old, Chip Conley bought an inner city motel in San Francisco. He built it into the second largest boutique hotel brand in America, Joie de Vivre. I've been practicing pronouncing that. After running and then selling that company, after 24 years, Chip was asked by Brian Chesky to become Airbnb's head of global hospitality and strategy in its earliest days. Today, Chip runs the Modern Elder Academy. We're going to talk about that. But perhaps more importantly, Chip is a valiant member of the Bald Men's Club. And I'd like to thank you for representing us, Chip, all so well. And thank you for being here today on the podcast. Welcome.
That's a bald-faced lie.
Yes. Nothing like a good bald pun to get things started.
I'm not quite bald. I'm close. I keep it short just to, there's nothing worse than a guy having, it's not usually a woman, a guy having just these little wisps of hair and not cutting them. It just, or the comb over thing that to make it look like you've got more hair than you do have. I think Michael Jordan, since he has a great series on TV right now, let's hand it to Michael. He's one of the people who made going bald or looking bald cool.
Yes. And my dad, actually, when you were describing that wispy, long, that's him. That's my dad. So I'm trying to convince him to do a closer cut. Today, Chip, we are going to talk mostly about the future of hospitality, which I think is something that you have in your blood. You have a knack for sensing trends. And you also have this belief in a gigantic, untapped workforce of people who are entering their second and third and even fourth quarters of their lives, to reference basketball again. But first, I want to get your take on right now, what is your normal quarantine day like?
So in normal quarantine day, first of all, I'm living here in Baja, an hour north of Cabo San Lucas, which is in the southern Baja Peninsula in Mexico. And I'm here partly because I live here most of the year, and it's where our Modern Elder Academy is. So I wake up early. I tend to go meditate on the roof, and I do an inversion machine, which basically turns me upside down for about 5 minutes.
I never quite got that inversion machine. Whenever I try it, I'm too anxious and I can't quite feel the effects.
Well, truly, your body will feel the effect, whether your nervous system does or not, to be determined. But your actual body being shifted upside down, it's particularly good for lower back, and it does stretch you. So the idea of being stretched a little bit means you're not getting so compact. And then I write. I tend to write early in the morning. If it's daybreak, I might go for a run on the beach, because when I go for a run on the beach, it's almost like I get a download from the heavens, and then I come back and I write more. Then the rest of my day is sort of a function of what's going on. I try to do a couple sets of exercises each day. I've got a lap pool here. I literally am on the beach, so I might go try to surf, although I'm not very good. I'll do a little bit of Spanish class, either in town. Right now, not in town because of the quarantine. Do lots of responses to emails. And then more than anything, the thing I'm focused on these days is just solving real estate problems and hospitality real estate problems because of the state of the travel economy. I end my day with a walk with my dog on the beach, and then with one or two or three of my best friends who are in quarantine with us, we'll watch a show, a movie, or part of a series every night. It's funny. I have never watched any series in over 20 years. In this century, I never watched a series. I didn't have a TV. I mean, I did have a TV, but I only used it for sports or elections.
And so what are you watching? What's your series?
We're watching The Crown right now. That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. I've been watching that too. Yeah.
I like The Crown. Watched A Million Little Things.
Okay.
That was a sort of a cool little series. Watched the OJ versus America, ESPN 5 piece. So I'm appreciating the ritual. I think what's happening is when there's so much uncertainty in life, figuring out how to create some routine and ritual in your life, especially if you're not working at the office, you actually have to create some structure and maybe a little bit of predictability. And I'm not a fan of predictability usually, but right now predictability doesn't sound so bad.
Yeah, I'm with you. And watching something like the OJ trial, I mean, you realize you don't have it that bad. Things could be way worse.
Yes.
Push it up till the speaks in the car start breaking up. Got solid gold kicks when we're rocking up. Just wait.
Chip, you have kind of disrupted hospitality a couple times. I want to go back to the first time you did this, and this was when you created your first hotel company. But I'm curious, back in that moment, if you put yourself back in those shoes, what were some of the sort of market trends or the conditions about culture at that time that sort of paved the way for this little company to start and really to thrive?
Well, there are a couple things going on. First of all, went to college at Stanford, went to business school at Stanford, graduated when I was 23, and went to work for a commercial real estate developer. But I was bored, to be quite frankly. I didn't really enjoy the commercial real estate development business. It wasn't creative enough. And what I also noticed was I had a one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco, and over and over again, people would come from around the globe, people I knew, and instead of staying in a hotel, they'd stay on my couch. So I had focus groups of one, and I would ask them, so why are you staying here rather than elsewhere? And the thing I heard probably half the time was, San Francisco's got a lot of hotels, but they're all either expensive or really boring. So I said, okay, what if I created a hotel that was inexpensive and not boring and sort of fun? And it was at that time I started doing a little research on the boutique hotel movement, which at that point in 1986, it was really just Ian Schrager and Bill Kimpton who'd started their companies. And I wrote a business plan, finished it on my 26th birthday, and called it Joie de Vivre, which means joy of life in French. And within 2 months, now this is the bizarre part, within 2 months, I bought a motel, a dodgy pay-by-the-hour motel in the Tenderloin, which is a tough neighborhood in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And I was off to the races as a budding boutique hotel who had hourly rates. I had to take the hourly rate business out by the time we opened in the spring. And my total investment, this is the part that's fascinating. So my total investment was $800,000 to buy the hotel on an acre of land because we didn't own the land. It was on a 40-year land lease. $200,000 to renovate it and $100,000 working capital. So for $1.1 million, which is, you probably can't buy a studio condo in San Francisco today for $1.1 million. For $1.1 million, I started a hotel chain. And I'm still really proud of that fact. That was 33 and a half years ago.
And so that probably means that there were lots of people like your friends who were super excited about something in the middle of those two existing hotel options that weren't their style. And that kind of ushered in this entire wave that everybody now recognizes as the boutique hotel movement. Fast forwarding to when you entered onto the scene at Airbnb, what were some of the same kind of conditions or currents that were taking place that you think carried that project forward?
Well, so I sold Joie de Vivre after 24 years in 2010. And at that time, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do next. I was curious about some trends in the hospitality business, but I was also ready to take
like what?
I was fascinated by co-living, which is something I'm still fascinated by. The idea that in very expensive urban markets, people find a way to have small bedrooms and then sort of have social areas. And there's a company today that I work with called The Collective, based in London, that's really on the pace to be the world's probably biggest and hopefully best co-living developer and operator. So I was looking at that. I was looking at something called transformational travel trips that transform people's lives. I was looking at the idea of how do you create digital nomad, places around the world. If you can live anywhere and travel a lot and for your job, where would you, like, instead of having a home or a hotel, what's in between? Long story short is a couple years after I sold the company, I got a call from Brian Chesky, founder and CEO of Airbnb, saying, you know what? I'd love to have you be my mentor. I would love to have you join the company. Do you know what Airbnb is? And I've never used it. I said, aren't you a subsidiary of Couchsurfing? He said, no, that's a different company. He says, why don't I Uber over to your house? This is March of 2013. I never met him before. So why don't I Uber over to your house and I'll tell you more about what we're doing and how you could be helpful, because we want to democratize hospitality. And I said, you're going to Uber over to my house. What's Uber? I had been a pioneer at age 26, but at 52, I was now sort of the old guard, the status quo. And I didn't really understand this whole new tech sharing economy revolution. So Brian and I spent a bunch of time together, and then in a stealth fashion in April of 2013, and for the first 5 months, it was all stealth. That's what's so weird. We did not announce it to anybody. We had me in a role where I was sort of helping to mentor Brian, and Brian was mentoring me as much as I was mentoring him because I'd never been in a tech company before. And quickly, what was my initial role was to be just head of all the hosts globally and head of hospitality, creating a hospitality program. But then with time, I became head of strategy, head of business development, head of landlord partnerships, head of learning and development.
Did it start? It must have started crystallizing for you. You're like, okay, now I see exactly where all this is going.
Well, it did. I mean, yes, thank you for taking me back to your original question. What got me initially, I just didn't get the business. Like, why would anybody want to stay in each other's homes? But what three key trends started to kick in for me. Number one is boutique hotels really proved to the Hilton Marriott world that for a certain segment of travelers, what was more important to them was the experience and feeling like a local than feeling the predictability of the Holiday Inn in Denver, just like the one in Detroit. So I think boutique hotels were an evidence that travelers were open to the standard deviation of boutique hotels, meaning you could have your best or your worst experience in that particular boutique hotel company. Similarly, Airbnb took that standard deviation further and allowed you hopefully to get matched with the right kind of place. And with the peer-to-peer review system, you sort of felt it was somewhat vetted. Secondly, there were these two little companies called VRBO and Craigslist, both of which started in 1995. And they both proved that there was, in fact, a market for people to rent out their space and to strangers. In the case of Craigslist, it was to find a roommate. In the case of VRBO, it was second homes.
Right.
All Airbnb did was take the VRBO model for second homes and dramatically improve it by having a payment system, a much better website. Basically, the company was embedded in the whole process, as opposed to VRBO was basically just an advertising platform.
Yeah, I actually use that original VRBO homepage in my slides when I give presentations because it's really amusing looking back on it.
Interesting. Well, that's so Airbnb just made a better mousetrap and then also took that mousetrap and applied it to urban markets. And when I first joined, it was really about Airbnb was urban, millennial, budget travelers. That's it. And part of my role in the company was to help to expand way, way, way beyond just that little niche. The third trend was the idea of home swapping. Now, this was interesting. I hadn't really thought about this originally, but when I spent more time there, I was like, yeah, people have been home swapping since 1953. And people have been basically, you have a certain level of trust. You'll have more trust in home swapping than you do maybe with home sharing, because literally someone's in your home and you're in there, and there's a reciprocity. But the fact that people actually have been home swapping since the time Holiday Inn, as the first global hotel chain, I think, got started, meant that this is not like some new phenomena. What Airbnb did is it took it to a new level where it was people's primary homes, and often you were staying in the home while the host was there, etc. Now, of course, Airbnb blew up into an enormous company, and there are all kinds of things, all kinds of people, entrepreneurs, etc., who jumped on the bandwagon, and took it in all kinds of different directions. But I think the number one thing to know is that at the heart of the theme of Airbnb was to help people belong anywhere. And I think there's still truth to that. I think, especially in a time like now with the pandemic, belonging is sort of a core human need. And generally, most chain hotels don't give you much of a sense of belonging. And then the word anywhere basically means anywhere because there are homes all over the globe. Whereas you can't find a Marriott north of the Arctic Circle just because there's not enough people going there. But you'll find, I went to north of the Arctic Circle to the Ice Hotel, which is sort of cool in Sweden. There were no Marriotts nearby. But right in my own little village that I was in, there were 250 Airbnb homes that opened themselves up. And so the fact is you can find an Airbnb experience just about anywhere in the world.
This is a perfect chance to introduce you to Point Central, the home automation experts of our industry. Let Point Central help you reduce hassle and improve your income through smart home automation. Eliminate keys with connected door locks, allowing guests to go directly to their rental, removing late night trips due to lost keys, and get notifications when cleaning crews or maintenance teams complete their work. This actually seems especially relevant today in the post-COVID world where people, all people really, travelers especially, are going to be kind of on edge. And the fewer touch points, the fewer germs that are going in and out of that property, the better. Control utility bills with Point Central by scheduling set points so that renters cannot drastically raise or lower the temperature when the property's occupied. So the temperature basically stays consistent when it's vacant. Stu and Tammy, you guys put the temperature on like Arctic blast. Is that a Panama thing?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they do have it on Arctic blast a lot of places in Panama, although where we live, we don't have air conditioning. But a lot of times when we're in vacation rentals and I don't know, it's just nice to sleep with the covers on and have it cool.
Yeah.
Plus, you're apparently, a reptile and you love just warm weather all the time.
That is Mr. Reptile.
I think maybe we're just like sweaty people.
You are sweaty people. That's a fact.
But no, really, seriously, there's a lot of systems in our house. We live off the grid, and the more automation we can bring to it, the better in terms of when generators turn on, when solar panels turn on, when batteries charge, when they don't charge. I'd love to be able to lock the doors. I'd love to have some home automated camera systems that are sending me alerts when there's motion sensors going on. And eventually I want automated climate control. So I'm going to be one of the first people to sign up for Point Central just as soon as I get some of the other things like electricity working.
Hot damn. Talk about an endorsement. Point Central can also help prevent costly maintenance projects through real-time alerts such as water leak detectors, humidity limits, and the new HVAC analytics program. Tells you early on when your HVAC unit starts to misbehave. I've become like an expert on HVAC analytics since I started working with Point Central, and it is indeed a very helpful thing. Finally, Point Central helps you give owners an extra peace of mind with monitored life safety services such as smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, and intrusion monitoring. Visit pointcentral.com/VRMB to learn more. That's pointcentral.com/VRMB. That was in my best automated voice. Let's get back to the show. You've perfectly segued into a question I think a lot of people who are listening to this, they kind of know where I'm going. And it's taking into account everything that you've just shared with what is shaping up as an entirely new world ahead of us due to this crazy pandemic. Are there any pockets of hospitality innovation? Are there any currents that you like now moving forward that haven't necessarily been packaged yet?
Yeah, I think, let me say the following. I think one thing that hasn't been factored or figured out yet, but I think it's a trend that everybody knows. So we all know there's a trend due to the pandemic to remote work. Like that's sort of obvious.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for travel? Well, the natural tendency for people to go to is like, oh, that's really terrible for travel. Well, it is for certain segments of travel, no doubt about it. I think certain segments like the convention and large meeting business is going to take a long time to recover, as will cruises. But actually, there's a segment out there that has been hinted at before. I've been seeing it at both Airbnb and at The Collective, the co-living company. And that is the segment of people who are not looking for a home away from home. They're looking for a home instead of home. What do I mean by that? So a hotel is a home away from home. An Airbnb has generally been thought of as a home away from home. A growing number of people on the Airbnb platform we were seeing were thinking of Airbnb as a home instead of home. Their length of stay tended to be longer. They were staying a week, 2 weeks, sometimes months at a time. So they were using the platform as their landlord virtually, as the person. And here's the big difference now, in the pandemic era. The people who we would call digital nomads, who could travel around the world, live in different places, and work from on the road as long as they had a strong Wi-Fi connection, that was a small segment of the population, generally millennials. Here's the punchline. When we live in an era where remote work becomes more common, we unleash people from their primary home and the city in which they live and their suburban neighborhood. Now, of course, if you got kids in school and et cetera, this may not apply to you. But you're an empty nester in your early 50s, and you and your husband or wife are both working remotely, and you live in suburban Boston. Well, maybe actually you'd like to live in
Baja.
Baja, San Miguel de Allende. You want to move somewhere else? You want to live in Bali. The one thing about this, just to be clear, remote work works well and relatively seamlessly as long as you have a good Wi-Fi connection, as long as you have a company where your presence doesn't have to be there all the time, and as long as you're in generally the same time zone. It starts to get a little dodgy if you're trying to let's see, for me, Mumbai is about the opposite side of the world. If I was working for a Mumbai company and trying to do it from here in Mexico, it wouldn't work all that well. So I would say, you got to keep it somewhat within the realm of, 4 to 6 hours ahead of you, 4 to 6 hours behind you. But you could go and actually be on the road, and you could be a bit of full of wanderlust while you are also working, the working wanderluster. So that's what I think. I think that's a trend, and I think that who's going to take advantage of that? Well, unfortunately, the hotel industry has really bad extended stay options. Extended Stay America, Residence Inn, Embassy Suites. They're all really boring. They're not the kind of place you're going to stay a long time. Airbnb is moving in this space, so I think Airbnb is going to be more and more an option. But I actually think little communities. There are some companies out there that have been started, like Habitas, and Roam, ROAM. These companies have been started with the intent of creating little nests where people could go, and it's sort of like Soho House, but for the sojourning person, often not in the city. So I think that's a hospitality opportunity, is to create a membership club for people to have 40 or 50 locations around the world. Each location might have no more than 15 or 20 units in it, but you have someone who cooks for you there, and you just have a cool location, and you can just sort of live in any one of these places.
I love that. And that I'm kind of a perfect example of that digital nomad, you could call me, lifestyle, and that I don't have a family or kids. I do have the ability to work from anywhere. I can pretty much work on high-speed Wi-Fi, but it's interesting that you put it now in perspective, that I used to kind of be a small segment, but now it's kind of broadening out thanks to this acceleration of remote work. When somebody listening to this, and again, these are primarily vacation rental managers, they own their own and operate other people's properties, anywhere from 2 to 2,000 properties. They're listening to this and they're starting to put together a plan for their own business coming out of this, when travel restrictions are lifted a little bit. And they start thinking about potentially new demographics. Talk to us a little bit about the power of removing things from your business and or life, because most of our colleagues have been spending the last decade or more accumulating stuff.
Yeah, you're talking my language there. In general, the first half of our life is about accumulating, and it's accumulating knowledge, friends, responsibilities, jobs, children, stuff,
Furniture.
Furniture, exactly. So you end up in a place where by midlife, there's a lot of evidence of this from age 45 to 50. It's the low point of happiness for people. And it's partly because they're just feeling weighed down by all of it. It's not just the physical stuff, it's the responsibilities, the obligations. You're often a sandwich generation at that point, having kids and taking care of your parents and etc. So there's a point, and I call it the great midlife edit. And the great midlife edit is a point in your life when you realize it is time to let go of all of this stuff, all of these responsibilities, and be wise enough to know how to distill down what's important and start editing from there. And I learned that lesson at Airbnb. I learned that a lot of the knowledge I had about the hospitality and the hotel industry was not all that valuable there. And so I had to sort of edit down my knowledge. I had to edit down the way I thought of myself. I had to evolve. I've been 24 years as CEO of a company I started. And now I'm not the sage on the stage, but I'm the guide on the side. And I had to edit my sense of mindset, my identity even. So when you do that, when you get to a place when you're able to start to edit things down so you don't feel weighed down by the things that aren't serving you anymore, it gives you the space to learn something new. And so I call this the great midlife edit, but I say midlife is a marathon, so you better be careful how much baggage you're carrying. You want to carry a lot of baggage on a marathon. And so the advice I would give to your listeners is, I think this is true of at any age, but if it's particularly true around 40, let's say 40 to 60. This is the era where I think it's most prevalent, with 50, 50 being right in the middle of that. That's the time when you better start looking at things. And actually this pandemic has given us an opportunity to be a little more reflective, take a little bit of space to sort of see what works for us, what doesn't work for us. What are habits that I need to just move out of? What are some new habits I could use? So if there's anything good about the pause, is it may give you a little bit more space to edit.
Let's talk for a second about new habits you can engineer into your post-pandemic vacation rental business. Whenever I talk to managers, I find myself saying over and over again, we must take advantage of all the technology at our disposal in order to achieve our goal. And oftentimes that's technology that's been around for several years, but in other instances, it is brand new. Every single vacation rental manager is looking for a way to protect their revenue, their guests, and the rental units that they manage. And Rental Guardian's a company that's been around for quite some time. I've seen Brady and John at almost every vacation rental show I've ever attended. They offer best-in-class travel protection, damage protection, and liability protection for over 600 managers throughout the world. But here's the new, amazing kind of technology layered on. Rental Guardian recently launched Master Cancel, which basically enables you the ability to offer flexible terms and conditions to your guests, but also protect your hard-earned revenue. At the end of the day, that is your income and the income of the owners that you represent. It's a new kind of technology, if you will, that vacation rental professionals of the future need to consider in order to reach their goals. Head over to rentalguardian.com to learn more. That's rentalguardian.com. Now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, babe, you read my mind and know what I like.
I built a resource for vacation rental professionals a couple months ago when this all started, called The Reset. And it's based on the idea that this is going to be a hard reset for everybody, especially our businesses, and identifying the parts that were working well and that you enjoyed and doubling down on those, doing more of them is important as the things that were driving you nuts, the things that you didn't sign up for when you first got started, and kind of getting a little bit more intentional on that. You talk a lot about wisdom, and I want to get in a second to the modern elders. But help us understand, first of all, what is wisdom for, say, a vacation rental professional, somebody who's managing 50 properties, almost like a small boutique hotel? What is wisdom for someone in that position?
So wisdom, another way to think of wisdom is pattern recognition. So if you recognize a pattern and you're able to recognize it early enough, you're able to adapt to it and maybe change your course of action as a result. When it comes to pattern recognition, many academics consider pattern recognition to be sort of foundational to what wisdom is about. So how would that relate to, being a vacation rental owner? Well, it means you see market trends, and you're able to adapt to them more quickly. Um, it also means that you're able to understand personalities better. So you understand that maybe for your particular vacation homes in your location, there's like 4 different kinds of profiles of
Mm-hmm.
people who might stay with you. And you might be able to try to understand pretty quickly which of the 4 profiles best describes this potential person who's going to come stay with you. And once you
Mm-hmm.
understand which profile they are, you can make sure that you are packaging the experience they're going to have um, appropriately. So, for example, if it's sort of a romantic couple, it's one set of things they want and they are going to care about. If it's a family doing a family vacation, that's a different experience.
Mm-hmm.
If it's like a little if it's like a girls, or sort of weekend away kind of experience, that's a different experience. So when you're able to ask the right questions that allow you to recognize patterns quickly, it allows you to adapt faster than your competition.
And I'm going to throw another one in there. This is one that a lot of our listeners are familiar with. It's identifying the wrong kind of person, the tire kickers, the people who are asking questions up front. You're like, oh, that's a red flag. I've seen that over and over and over again. When I got my start in vacation rentals, I owned and operated the only basically luxury accommodations in all of Casco Viejo, which was the historic district of Panama City, Panama. And we would get, on average, 1 out of every 2 guests who inquired that were just not the right fit. And they had no idea what they were getting themselves into. And it ended up becoming very wise of us to identify them and say, you know what? I don't think this is the right neighborhood for you. You may want to try to stay at the Hilton downtown. And they were so grateful for it. The opposite of that, the unwise move, was to just take their money and they would have a miserable time. So understanding both who fits and who doesn't becomes wise. Do you think hospitality, and specifically our niche, is a good fit for somebody who is entering that modern elder category? And also just explain to people who haven't heard the phrase what your modern elder phrase is all about. Yeah.
So when I was at Airbnb, I was twice the age of the average employee, and a few months into it, Joe Gebbia and Brian Chesky, 2 of the 3 founders, said to me, "Chip, we brought you in for your knowledge, but what we really have gotten is your wisdom." And I didn't know. I just had never thought about the difference between those 2 things. And then they said, "You're our modern elder." And I said, "What the hell? I don't want to be a modern elder."
Sounds like a senior citizen. Huh?
Yeah, it does. It's like elderly. So, but elder
Yeah.
and elderly are 2 different things. Elderly is like if you're elderly, you're probably in the last 5 or 10 years of your life, and you need support. If you're an elder, it's a relative term. An elder is somebody who is older than the people around them. And with the average age at Airbnb being 26 when I joined, and I was 52, of course I was an elder. But they said I was a modern elder because I was as curious as I was wise. So curiosity opens up possibilities, and wisdom distills down what's important. And so for someone to actually both be curious about things they don't know and be open to learning, but also to be wise enough to know what they do know and to be able to share that with others and to use that wisdom to make good decisions, being insightful and prescient, be able to sort of imagine the future and work backwards and say, okay, here's how we're going to get there. That's what it means, I think, to be a modern elder. And a modern elder is not, they're relevant, not reverent. I mean, most people don't revere their elders anymore. So sorry to say, but that's just how it is. But you could, just because you're an elder doesn't mean people will revere you. But if you're relevant, That means that you actually understand how to use your wisdom within the context of who you're offering it to. So that meant for me, as a hotel executive, I needed to know the context of how my hospitality knowledge was going to be relevant to a home sharing company.
Or a tech startup. Yeah. It's so different.
Even more so. So what I think is true of, where's the wisdom in this for modern elders in vacation rentals, and why is vacation rental a good space for, say, people in their 50s and 60s and even later? Well, for one of the things you need for vacation rental to be in the business is you have to have space. And whereas a lot of the people who are driving Ubers and Lyfts in the sharing economy have time and a car, and there's a lot of older people doing that as well. What we do know is that in the nature of the real estate economy, generally the people who own the space, whether it's primary homes, secondary homes, etc., apartment buildings, etc., tend to be people who are older. And so first, the first thing it takes to become someone who's a vacation rental owner is you have to have the space. Now you can be an operator, meaning you have a management company operating for owners, and you can do that at any age. But when it comes to the ownership side, you better have the space. Secondly, it is a business built on hospitality. And I actually think one of the things that is helpful for older people is there's a certain graciousness that is, not everybody has it. Let's start with that. These are general, but there's a certain set of manners, graciousness, and empathy that that we build up over time. And there is a lot of evidence that one's emotional intelligence, their EQ, actually grows with time, whereas your IQ does not. And so, as such, I think one of the most important attributes of great hospitality is empathy. How do you empathize with the traveler? How do you empathize with your guest? And so I think that is another reason why it makes sense. For some others, they've always wanted to be in the bed and breakfast business, and this is the closest they're going to get. So that's a possibility as well. And then finally, I think that one of the things that's interesting about vacation rentals and homes is that you've been on the planet long enough, so you've been in your neighborhood maybe long enough, and the area you're in, or even if it's your second home and you're not there, you've owned the home for 20 years, you know how that area has changed over time. You can be a great concierge. One of the things that I think is really unfortunate is when you, as a guest, go to a vacation rental place and the home feels extremely like IKEA based. It's like it's all it is. It's just sort of boring and generic. The host, so to speak, whoever is your taking care of you, doesn't know a damn thing about the neighborhood or what to
and
offer.
maybe doesn't even live there or not even headquartered there.
Not headquartered there, doesn't know doesn't know a thing about it, and therefore you sort of feel you're on your own. There's no concierge. And so I think, one of the beautiful things is if you have a vacation home or you have a primary home, you have a home that you want to actually rent out, it's probably in a location that you really like. And I highly recommend that you create your own, whether it's an online version or it's just in a notebook when people arrive, your own little concierge guide to the favorite things to do in the neighborhood. And this is also coming back to the idea of the 4 kinds of guests you might have. It really helps to know what kind of guests you have, because it will allow you to be better at matchmaking that guest with the kinds of things that they can do in your area, or the kind of restaurants when the restaurants reopen after the pandemic, that you can actually suggest that they go to.
Let's dive a little bit into that, because you've kind of made a name for yourself on the boutique hotel side of perfecting that balance of personalization, matching little things, little twists, little touches with the experience to the guest's desires or needs, but at scale. Most of our listeners are looking to grow their property management companies. A lot of them are trying to find that upper boundary. What is the maximum amount of properties that I want to hit, that I can maintain this level of control, that I can engineer into some touches that are personal and bespoke. Can you share with us any hospitality touches, the personal stuff that you've seen done at scale that you think people may be able to run with?
Well, the idea we just were talking about, which was to create a guide, a local guide, is if you had multiple homes in the same area, you do it once and you can scale it to 15 different places. So that's an easy one. Another one that we used to do in the boutique hotel business that I went on a world tour to 24 cities when I was at Airbnb, meeting with hosts around the world, doing workshops and speeches to them, teaching them a bunch of things. One of the things I taught them was the following. I said, people fall in love with a place often using all five senses. And we think it's just the visual, but there's all five senses. And I said, what if you were to actually think of your home, and you could do this, and you could do this at scale as a vacation rental operator. You thought of each of your homes with five adjectives that define that home. And the adjectives could be natural,
Sexy,
relaxy, sexy,
sleek.
sleek, whatever. Yeah, we know adjectives, any adjectives out there. So, but they have to be authentic to the place. Then you start to ask yourself, when someone arrives, how could we stimulate that guest's five senses within the first 5 minutes after they've arrived using those five adjectives? Now that sounds really complex.
It does.
Five adjectives, five senses, 5 minutes. But if you do this well, it's off the charts. So how can you do that? Let's say it's a place that sort of feels relaxing and natural and new agey, and it's the kind of place where you're just going to take a nice hot bath and you're just going to sort of like sink in. It's like a cocoon. Well, you play some, you have some music playing when they arrive. Now that having music play when they arrive is not an easy thing to do, because you don't know what time they're going to arrive exactly. But let's just say theoretically you have a way of knowing when they're going to arrive.
Yeah, and smart home automation is huge these days. A lot of people are utilizing it, so it may be closer than we think.
You could turn on the music. You could say, please text me 5 minutes before you're going inside.
I'm going to turn on the bathtub.
You're going to turn on the music to Enya or some kind of,
oh yeah,
music. You're going to actually somehow you're going to have an aromatherapy candle starting to burn. You're going to actually have a basket of fruit, waiting there, fresh fruit waiting for them. You're going to have a guide of what there is to do, but it's going to be in a leather bound kind of beautiful, very sensory touch kind of thing that looks great. And then, I've now said four things, but the fifth one I didn't say was what you're going to see. And that's what we see is all what we get obsessed with. That tends to be what we only focus on, but we forget the other four. But what you see is going to be important as well. But so if you could actually think of it that way, now you might say, oh my God, that's too much work. Well, just remember this thing, that if you're going to have the same people cleaning and fixing up and prepping a house, and they know that this house has this set of adjectives and this set of things, they can just set it up properly. Now, if you want to do it really simply, you just across the whole brand, you just have a standard across the whole brand. Across the whole brand, maybe one of the standards is you have a couple of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies waiting in a little. You don't want to have them out because there might be ants or whatever, but you have them just in a little glass case when people arrive, right there in the entry foyer with a note. So at the end of the day, the more personalized you make it, the better. But also, one of the things we used to talk about at the Airbnb trainings we would do is how have you educated your guest to know what to do when something goes wrong? One of the things about vacation rentals versus a hotel, if something goes wrong in a hotel, you just call down to the front desk. But if it's a vacation rental, what do you do? Well, you call the vacation rental manager. Yeah, that can help. But what if it's something that like needs immediate attention?
Hmm.
Where's the phone number for 911 or where? I mean,
The
911.
plumber.
Where's the plumber? Where are extra light bulbs when something goes out? Where is the stoppers if a toilet actually backs up? If your hot water takes 2 minutes to actually to go on because of whatever reason, is there a cute little sign that you've put in the bathroom that just apologizes for the fact that you've done nothing wrong? It just takes 2 minutes to get the hot water. So in essence, wherever there is a point in the person's stay that they feel a little bit lost or confused, how are you guiding them in a way that they feel like
They're in good hands.
yeah.
Yeah. Quick takeaway here. Communication. If you can effectively communicate your vision with your new standards and all the details to your team, then your vision will be accurately presented to your guests. On the flip side, if there are gaps in your communication, if at some point information is not being passed, your guest will not have the perfect stay. Breezeway's property care and operations platform solves the challenge of ensuring clean, safe, and high-quality properties in the wake of COVID-19. Combining deep learning technology with mobile-first task management, Breezeway automates operations and gives you confidence that every property will be ready for the next stay. Now, this is not a tool or really an idea that is new. In fact, Breezeway has been a gradual shift in the industry that has been accelerated because of the pandemic. It was created by the founder of FlipKey, my friend Jeremiah. Breezeway is helping over 400 vacation rental managers transform the way they care for properties and best respond to all of the surprises that we are presented with as a result of COVID-19. I love this company, and they've been mentioned on almost every interview this season, which makes them a perfect fit as a partner. Visit breezeway.io to learn more. Feel free to ask any question, even the simplest ones. They are happy to help and to move your business forward. Now let's get back to the show. And would you say, from your perspective with experience in boutique hotels, it would be fair to say that the largest hotels in the world, as you pointed out earlier, are kind of looking at the boutique hotel's ability to provide that kind of personalization, authenticity to travelers, and that there's money there. Would it be fair to say that a single property owner who is doing all of these little things right, is that kind of a future that even boutique hotels may be looking at and say, how do we get those kind of individual touches the same way that she did?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, as a boutique hotelier who created 52 boutique hotels over 24 years and started from scratch with just one, I am a big believer in the entrepreneur and bringing together a team of people who can help you scale that over time. So the thing that you have going for you, beyond the fact that just vacation rentals are becoming more and more popular relative to, say, chain hotels, is you have the personal touches, you have the entrepreneurship, you have the ability to adapt your product quickly. One of the things that's really interesting about the hotel business that a lot of people don't know is like Marriott and Hilton don't own all those hotels. In almost all cases, they're the franchisor. So there's really 4 players involved, and it's really hard for them to innovate. There is a owner of the hotel who then hires or signs a contract with a franchise, a flag, a Marriott Courtyard. So now that you've got Marriott Courtyard and you've got the owner, and then Marriott actually doesn't manage all of their courtyards. They have these independent management companies who have been approved to manage a Marriott Courtyard. So you now have a third organization, the management company, and all of the employees are not Marriott employees. They're employees of that management company. And then for a bigger hotel, you have something called an asset manager. And the asset manager's job is to basically help the hotel owner make sure that the franchise or the chain, the brand, and the management company are doing their job well. Well, let me tell you, in a pandemic or in a really difficult time, there's a heck of a lot of finger pointing.
And we're actually in a great position. We're small. We can make our decisions and move.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's really hard for these big companies to move quickly. I've been impressed by how quickly they've moved in the pandemic, though. Hats off to them for being able to do that. But when it comes to innovation, it is really hard for them to do that. And when it comes to localization, in terms of something that feels local and personal to a particular destination, really hard for them to compete.
So you've perfectly segued into one of my last questions, which is about us as independent owners and managers navigating this new world of hospitality when travelers are ready to return. How do we utilize that speed and agility and really find more opportunities than we ever knew about? And it's based on a concept that I'm calling cottage industry 3.0. Which is a throwback to the original cottage industry of individuals who were making things with their hands out of their cottages, but were then disrupted and made obsolete by the Industrial Revolution. Is it possible that all of the circumstances that we have at this moment, that an independent creator, be it a vacation rental host or otherwise, are we entering a new era for these kinds of entrepreneurs, do you think?
Yes, I think the internet has helped to level the playing field. Prior to the internet coming into the foreground 25 years ago, it was really hard to compete because how do you get your word out? It was word of mouth, not word of mouse. And today, while no one has a mouse anymore, you understand the mouse was the thing that you used as your curse, as the thing that you use to sort of get around your computer. And so long story short is I think that we live in an era where becoming an entrepreneur and getting online and building a market and having social media to support that has opened up an entrepreneurial playground that's bigger than it ever was before.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and frankly, in many industries, it's not the cost of goods sold that makes the difference. Like in an industry where you're a mammoth company and you can buy your steel at half the price that another real estate developer can buy their steel, you have a big competitive advantage as a big company.
Sure.
But in many industries, and absolutely in hospitality and travel, some of the biggest operating costs we have is labor. And the fact that our labor costs are no different than the chains. In fact, often it's lower because the chains sometimes have to pay more because they're worried about, in certain cases, being unionized, etc.
Mm-hmm.
There's an element of ingenuity and creating a great culture. I wrote a book called Peak: How Great Companies Get Their Mojo from Maslow. The whole book is really about how to create a great culture. And if you create a great culture, you don't have to pay people, combat pay because they hate working there. They love working there. And therefore, it doesn't mean you pay them nothing, but it does mean that at the end of the day, the reason that they're there is because of things beyond just money. So I think, yes, I think ingenuity, I think changes. And the other thing about ingenuity and entrepreneurship is the faster we have change, the more opportunities arise. And frankly, the more certain businesses become obsolescent. And so that does mean there's opportunities to be the pioneer in many ways.
And Chip, I want to touch on one last thing, which I've been thinking about and emailing you about for quite some time. And it's this Modern Elder Academy. This is basically like the coolest school on the planet. Can you give people a brief summary of what it is? Because if I know any of VRMB subscribers or Inner Circle members, they exactly fit that bill. Explain to them how this is a first.
So it's the first midlife wisdom school in the world. And let's take a step back and know that the word adolescent, which we all know as teenagers, that word adolescent is only 116 years old. Before the year 1904, it didn't exist. Now, it's not that teenagers didn't exist, but we thought that once you hit puberty, you were an adult. You got married, you worked in the mines.
The rest is history.
Once we recognized that adolescence was a life stage, and it's a life stage to prepare people to become adults, public junior high schools and high schools got created. And there was a sense that you gave people counseling and support to help them move toward adulthood. Well, fast forward 116 years to 2020. In the last 20 years, a new word has evolved in the academic world called middlescence. Not adolescence, but middlescence. And it's like adult adolescence. It's middlescence, just like adolescence is a period of time in your life when you go through hormonal, emotional, and physical changes and trying to figure out what you're going to do. Middlescence, which typically happens between about age 40 and 60, is a period of your life where you're going through a lot of transitions and changes. But we have zero in the way of schools and tools for people. We don't have public junior high schools and high schools for people in their 40s to 60s. In fact, we sort of have people in their 40s through 60s thinking that they're doing the game of life wrong.
Yeah, feeling like they're losing or something.
Yeah, they're like they're losing or irrelevant or, there's a lot of things. And so based upon my experience at Airbnb, I decided, I have a home down here on the beach in Mexico. I said, what if I created an academy with 4 or 5 acre campus on the beach where people would come for a week at a time and reimagine how to repurpose themselves for the second half of their life or for the latter part of their life. What is it that they'd like to do or be, or what's the new skill they want to learn? There's a study out of Yale University that showed that when people actually shift their mindset on aging, they gain 7.5 years of good years to their life, and which is more than if they had actually stopped smoking or started to exercise in midlife. So this is a public health opportunity. And so I do believe that these midlife wisdom schools, or I'm also calling them a long life school. It's not lifelong learning, but it's long life learning, how to learn how to live a long life. If you're going to live if you are, let's use an example. If you're 54 years old today and you're going to live till age 90, you're exactly halfway through your adult life if you started counting at age 18. Most of us don't think that way. Most of us
think T minus.
Yeah, exactly. We think at age 54, we're sort of on the downslide. Well, you got a 36-year downslide if you're thinking that way. So we teach people how to have a growth mindset, how to think and imagine how to learn in new ways. And so it's a phenomenal experience. We've had 800 people from 24 countries, 99th percentile in terms of guest satisfaction. And for me, it's a social enterprise because over half the people who come are on some kind of scholarship we give them, because we believe that wisdom is not taught, it's shared. And so the cohorts, which are about 16 to 20 people each week, are a really diverse group of people.
So amazing. And back to where we kind of started, I feel like this pandemic is almost giving a lot of people, no matter the age, the chance to hit that reset button, the excuse in a way to think about change. And I'm kind of looking forward to becoming, what's the minimum age that you've got there?
We said it's only people from 45 to 65. We've had people from 30 to 88. And only 75% of the people have been between 45 and 65. So 25% have either been younger than 45 or older than 65. So
what does that mean? That everybody's really just united by their spirit and outlook?
We say that, MEA is about navigating midlife transitions. And people have defined midlife. And it's also a place where people cultivate and harvest wisdom. And there's a lot of people in their 30s who want to cultivate and harvest wisdom. So that's been part of it.
Beautiful. I love that. Chip, thank you so much. This has been a long time in the making, and I just love your perspective, and I really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's an honor. Thank you for everything you do, Matt.
I hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as I did having it. The episode was produced by Tammy Rowe and Stuart Hooper. of Mango Fish Studios. Our intro song is The Moon of Pajang by Instant Party. And if you feel inspired, please consider sharing to social media with your big takeaway. We love takeaways. They make us feel great. Lastly, if you want to receive updates, you can do so at vrmb.com/mmm. And if you want to join our virtual community of vacation rental professionals, become a member of VRMB's Inner Circle today. Until next time.